Kengan Ashura has everything I want from a tournament manga. It has great fights, great characters, it has exciting action, stupid logic, and beautiful panels. It has real death. It has real friends. And that's what I want to focus on today. All the great things it does as a tournament manga. I'll be avoiding spoilers as I think this is a really funny and surprising series you should read blind, but the very basic premise is, an underground fighting league is ran by real-world CEOs. From McDonald's to Nintendo to Disney. These CEOs spend millions and hire the best fighters in the world to compete for things that can't be bought. Priceless paintings, the rights to building a new district, and basically, respect. Having the greatest fighters means you're one of the greatest companies. Everyone wants to be the greatest, but one day, a CEO seeks to disrupt the very foundation of this system that's hundreds of years old. And for some reason, he hires a bottom-rung, washed-out salaryman to do it. And a mysterious man who comes from an unmapped and lawless area of the world. That character is Oma. And that story is Kengan Ashura. Say something.
Read Cat Planet Cuties. It is an excellent song.
Nope. Welcome to the first episode of a weekly vlog show called Manga Mondays, in which I talk about manga that I'm reading or want to recommend. Today I'm drinking Hustle. It is an energy drink with no sugar, so that tastes about as good as you'd expect. And today we're talking about Kengan Ashura. And a little bit about Kengan Omega, which I didn't like as much. We'll get to that later. Originally, when I was recording this, I had not yet read Kengan Omega. And then I recorded my Halloween episode with Blue Breed, and I realized some things I had to redo to make this work better in this format. So I'm re-recording this, and now I have read Kengan Omega. And again, I'll get to that later. But I loved Kengan Ashura. It was great. I would have read Kengan Ashura a lot sooner if I hadn't read Baki first. 2 years ago, I went on a Baki bender. A manga app I had gave me a daily recommendation and recommended me Baki Dao? I don't know. I caught up on that series, and then I went back and read all of Baki in like 3 months. All 132 volumes of the main series, all those parts. I looked a little bit into the Gaiden for that fucking Mafia dude, I can't remember his name. Hey, what's up? Editor here. That was Baki Gaiden's Scarface, following Karu Hanayama. That one in particular is kind of a longer one, but it really kicks ass. Check it out. I was totally obsessed. I was taking breaks in the bathroom at work. I was sitting on the couch at parties just reading manga on my phone for like 3 hours. I'm already a sucker for manga that are just huge tournament arcs. A couple of my favorites would have to be like Shaman King or Gamaran. But Baki was different. It wasn't all about the arena. It wasn't all about just the tournament itself. Most characters represented a world of martial arts, and the author would use these characters to springboard more into the story and more about the world. They had this intense aura and legacy around them. It got you excited to see them interact and fight, and they could fight anywhere, on the streets, in the jungle, inside of a skyscraper, like with Baki and his dad. It wasn't like your generic shonen where you only have a character design and weapons to go by. These characters had a lot of build-up around them, and their fighting was like really intense and fun to watch. They weren't afraid to just like throw a dude through a building. It wasn't just like, check out my epic weapon, check out my Deus Ex Machina power. It was like, no, I've been training in the streets for like 1,000 years, even though I'm 15 years old. Initially their designs were honestly really repulsive, and I would show it to my friends and they'd be like, that looks disgusting. But after a while it's really endearing, especially since all the other characters look normal and look kind of like 80s or 90s manga protagonists, and you have like these freaking truck dudes and they're just like 3 feet taller than everybody else. Anyways, once I caught up to Baki, I needed something to fill the void. I had recently been more active on manga Twitter, and I saw Kengan Ashura come up a lot. The anime had released maybe a year after that. So I picked it up, I read the first 12 chapters or so, and I dropped it. Didn't really care for it. I was like, this is okay, this is overhyped, it's not as good as Baki, I don't want to read this shit. The introduction of Oma was pretty shallow. He was just ambiguously strong, like, oh, he's just perfect. It's like the whole One Punch Man joke I put up over there. 2 years later, everyone is still talking about this, and I'm seeing some funny screenshots of Adam Dudley, and I'm like, alright, I'll try again. 3 weeks later this time, and I've finished all 236 chapters. Now it's been like 5 weeks, but whatever. But yes, it's really good. Let's get into it. What makes it stand out? Well, the first important thing is the world building, which it does really well for a tournament manga. The important thing to note is the fighters aren't trying to kill each other in most cases, so when a fighter is defeated, they're not just gone, they become part of this larger cast, and that builds over time. Especially because they're all contained on this island, so they don't go anywhere, they're just like hanging out now. A couple of them become announcers, a couple become mentors or students. They all stick around and have a lot to say. They all continue to grow as people and characters too. Doraemon, the author, is definitely like, oh man, I can't wait to make these two guys friends, it's awesome. You can tell he's like preparing this in advance based on their personalities. Another thing I like about the world building is the martial arts these characters come with may have a country or previous master to support them. In some cases a group of fellow disciples or an entire family or clan, which makes the cast just huge. But it also makes these places the fighters come from feel real in the world because other people from that real place are hanging out and you'll sometimes see them, like the Kure clan. In the sequel, Omega, you actually go to the Kure clan village, but you see a lot of the people from that village or that clan in this story as well. My favorites are some of these old guys that used to be these incredibly scary masters and are now just like having a good time, joking around, or being overprotective grandparents. The next great thing this manga does is flesh out every single character down to the background characters. The fighters are seen among the crowds before their fights in most cases. You'll get a loose idea of their personality based on their interactions with other people, from small talk to entire beach episodes. Sometimes just their visual appearance or their presence walking by is really intimidating or just interesting. Check out this like Mickey Mouse mascot dude. I was so scared of this guy, just seeing him walking around. This other guy brings an entire shogi board onto the boat they're taking to get to the island, and he's like beating some of the fighters in shogi, and they're like these huge meatheads, they're getting pissed off, they're losing. Then when these characters actually go out for their match, you get their whole martial arts background. Sometimes it's ones you'd be familiar with, like wrestling or sumo or karate. But sometimes it's a new one made up by the author, like Raishin Lightning style, that's then established in this world and actually is like referenced by other characters. Or one that's native to a specific country, like Muay Thai. Some personalities also shape these styles and vice versa. Naturally, a sumo is honorable and stoic, where a wrestler is like big and loud and proud. The wrestler is like not afraid to take hits because he takes hits normally in a fight, and he has like a no defense style. It's crazy. It's obvious the team really cares about doing these styles justice too. At the end of volumes, you'll get little blurbs about them doing research, watching old movies, going out to see sumo, or practicing these moves on each other. Of the three people, there's the author, the writer, and the editor. One of them actually wrote the Raise Your Skinny Fists Like Dumbbells to Heaven manga. How heavy are the dumbbells you lift? I think it is. And that one's good too, I'd recommend that. Then once the match actually gets started, you'll get the fighter's personal history and what it means to them to be in this fight. Doraemon's team is really creative on this front, like, I'm impressed. Some of the stories are really fleshed out and thoughtful for all the characters, and there's a ton of characters. So this is like a 260 chapter tournament manga. It's obvious they've also written a lot more than they get to show in the story. Between chapters, you'll get little side stories, extra design process panels, initial and final designs, fun facts, who they're based on, that sort of thing. Some are really obvious, some are more ingrained in Japanese culture or more obscure. And then should a fighter have consecutive fights and they're not out in the first round, Doraemon will give you little bits and pieces at a time and really stack it on until you have like this whole world around this character. So yes, heaps of world building, heaps of character design, and backstory. Ugh. For how much of the story takes place in one area, you really get a feel for the world. So that's what makes it unique from most other tournament mangas, just the care and desire to make this world feel really full. Left me with a good sense of satisfaction. It wasn't like all Deus Ex Machina powers and just like, here's this guy, he does this thing, you'll never see him again. People exist, people are referenced, people are thought about. Here's a couple small things I forgot to mention that I just want to throw in there. The character designs are really strong. All these dudes are just using their fists, and mostly naked. There's no big weapons, magic, clothes, fantasy races. Despite that, everyone really stands out, from their silhouette to their actual just like visual design. Another thing that helped me were the regional names. It wasn't all just common Japanese names I had to remember. The American guy had an American name, the Thai guy had kind of a Thai name. If they were mentioned in conversation, it was like, oh, I know that name. Or I know that like country, so I can kind of figure out which guy that was. And the first time a character is seen in every single chapter, they get a little box to remind you what company they work for and who they are. And all the companies have chosen fighters that kind of represent or make sense for their company. Like the heavy artillery weapons people have this huge muscular mercenary guy. The Disneyland guy obviously has the creepy mouse dude I mentioned earlier. And if they reference this CEO's fighter, I know who that CEO is, so I can kind of figure out which fighter that was, and then remember his name. And like it just keeps me in the loop. I'm really bad with names, so that was very helpful. And beyond that text information, there's a lot of space in the panels, which makes it really easy to parse information quickly and read through quickly when things get more intense, which I really appreciate. and why I can't at all blow through something like Dorohedoro where you have to read super slow because it's so just like sludgy and dense. And that's part of the atmosphere. It's great, but like the fights in that manga don't flow nearly as well as something like this fucking like corkscrew punch over 2 panels. Like, come on, that's great. And that's just like what you love fighting manga for. Like I mentioned earlier, the author Doraemon practiced some of these poses with his writer, and it's really obvious when you look at some of these grapples or these like really more complicated hits that he spent a lot of time thinking about the anatomy and how that would look on a page. Overall, the visuals and storytelling pace was just perfect. Now real quick, some of the things I didn't like that much. Firstly, like I said earlier, the story took like 30 chapters to go anywhere. And then at that 30 chapter mark was when that dude brought the shogi board in the boat, and I was like, is this a joke? This is interesting. This is funny. I like this. Let's keep reading. The other issue is our 2 main characters. Oma might have the most bland personality in the whole story, and his story arc comes in way too late. He's not unlikable. I just wish he had a little bit less cold of an attitude and we learned more about him early on to establish the stakes of his fight. Then there's Yamashita, who honestly has a great arc and I like him a lot, but then he has a plot twist backstory thrown in at the end, and it was being built up to the whole time. We just didn't need it. He was a great character, like I loved him. And then it's like, oh, by the way, this. And I'm like, okay, I already like him a lot. I really don't care. Overall, really good read. Absolutely worth your time. It can be read really quickly despite its over 200 chapters, and I think you'll have a really easy time finding somebody to share this with. It's one of the best tournament manga out there. Thank you for listening. It's getting late. Okay, real quick. Let's talk about Kengan Omega. So after I recorded this, I then went and read Kengan Omega, thinking I was going to make a follow-up video. But I don't have a lot to say. What I do have to say is I don't like it as much as Ashura. I like what it's trying to do initially. I really like Koga, and I really like the idea of a character getting built up with the characters we've already met as trainers. It's a lot of fun. They just had to make an Oma look-alike, and then, spoilers, they had to bring Oma back? Why? What's that about? Come on. I don't care if the storyline is about cloning. I really don't care. That sucks. At first I was kind of nostalgic to see him again, and then I was like, this is just lazy. This is just no good. And the weird thing about this story is, you see all the characters right away. There's nobody introduced. You see them all walk out right away. They do get more backstory later. They don't have their CEOs with them either, because they're just guys by themselves. I feel like with the CEO, you kind of break the tough guy persona, and you kind of invite the fact that there's more to this character because they had to at some point make a contract with the CEO and kind of like have a personality. Without the CEO, just having the fighter by themselves, it just doesn't work as well. And seeing them all right away is kind of lame. I think it's kind of lost its direction already. I just don't like it that much. I trust that the author will continue to write good fights, and I will definitely finish the story and keep reading it, but I'm kind of disappointed, and it's not as good as Kengan Ashura, which is a whole and a classic. Wow, it's been a while since I made a video. Not including the Halloween one. A solo video. I appreciate you watching. If you're a new viewer, please consider subscribing. I'm going to be doing more of these videos. If you'd like, you can follow me on Instagram, where I post panels from what I'm reading daily. You can follow me on Twitter, or you can follow me on Twitch, where I stream Japanese games that I have on my backlog Monday and Thursday nights. Please let me know what you thought of the video. Please let me know what I should read next. Please tell me my opinions are wrong and tell me what you like. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And that's about it. That's all I had to say. Have a good night. Thank you for watching.